Hello, welcome, and thanks for joining us on this edition of News 2. I'm Sandra Gumansing. The Virgin Islands Water and Power Authority continues to search for ways to help lower electricity costs for consumers. So together with the VI Energy Office, they hosted a kickoff meeting with key partners who can help bring wind power online. News 2's Erica Parsons has more.
We have a very ambitious goal of reducing our dependency on fossil fuel.
By now, you know about 60-25.
The governor has called for us to put in place not only plans but actions to move us towards a 60% reduction in fossil fuel consumption for power production by the year 2025. So part of that is the 18 megawatts of solar power that the Water and Power Authority has under contract.
With solar in the works, WAPA has set their sights on wind power, at least 25 megawatts between the two districts. They started those talks during a recent meeting, and Energy Director Knight said they're trying to see how they can develop utility-scale wind power to meet their goal.
Well, with wind, we're looking at possibly power purchase agreements, or even WAPA owning the turbines, putting out an RFP asking for a design builder to design, build, and perhaps even operate and maintain the systems, but WAPA retains the ownership. Or we can do it the same way we're doing the solar projects, which is to engage in a power purchase agreement where we just agree to buy power from an independent power producer.
While it will still be at least 2 to 3 years before WAPA begins generating electricity from wind power, officials say the wind, together with the solar projects, will make up at least 9% of the 60% reduction goal on fossil fuel.
38% of that 60% goal is energy conservation, energy efficiency initiatives. So the bulk of it actually comes from our reducing our energy consumption or consuming energy more efficiently. But as it pertains to the renewable component, we think that the wind energy at the utility scale level could probably provide about 9% of that 60% target. We've started collecting wind resource data at both sites that we're interested in, and we're hoping that we can use that data to put out an RFP later this year with the hopes of having a project under development by 2014.
Erica Parsons, News 2.
WAPA signed power purchase agreements for solar last year with Toshiba International, Lanco Virgin Islands One, and Sun Edison. Officials say the companies are in the final stages of permitting and will be preparing for groundbreaking beginning this month. Well, as a result of the bevy of violence that has been happening in the Bergs Home housing community in recent weeks, the Virgin Islands Human Services Department has made the decision to close down the Head Start Center in the area indefinitely. The decision was made after a police chase of Kemoy Thompson that resulted in shots fired and ended by Building 6B of the Bergs Home complex right behind the Head Start Center. The center will remain closed until alternatives are found to resume classroom sessions, and News 2 will keep you updated. Commissioner Albert Bryan Jr. says the department is extremely short-staffed and struggling to provide the services they are mandated to provide. That's according to the testimony before the Senate Education and Workforce Development Committee on Tuesday. According to Bryan, the Unemployment Insurance Fund has been borrowing money to operate since 2009, largely due to the fact that employers in the territory have paid little or no unemployment insurance tax for the past 12 years. There is currently a debt of $64.2 million, according to Bryan. In order to keep the project running, he proposed issuing a bond. Last Thursday, Senator Kenneth Gittens submitted a letter of request to the Departments of Finance and Property and Procurement and to the Office of Management and Budget, calling for a listing of all cellular service contracts entered into on behalf of the government of the Virgin Islands and or paid for by the government of the Virgin Islands. Gittens said in a release, with the expiration of Act 7457, the Virgin Islands Economic Stability Act of 2011, which also addresses the 8% cut fast approaching, we must aggressively uncover methods to bridge the budget shortfall from top to bottom. He says, I want to be certain that we explore every available option in cutting costs. Well, funeral arrangements have been made for 28-year-old Brent Francis, who was stabbed to death by his roommate in Georgia on March 30th. Police arrested his roommate, 24-year-old Stephen O'Reilly. Both were natives of St. Croix. Arrangements are being made by James Memorial Funeral Home. Viewing is on Sunday, April 14th from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Service begins at 11 a.m. at Central Seventh-day Adventist Church, located at 17A Pleasant. Francis' last words before he died at a hospital on March 30th to police or what led them to search for his roommate, who is now facing murder charges. Stephen O'Reilly turned himself in days after. A resident reportedly found Francis bleeding on the ground. Francis had multiple stab wounds. He later died at the hospital. O'Reilly is the son of Senator Narida Rivera O'Reilly. Brent attended the Seventh-day Adventist school for high school. After graduation, he then went on to the Andrews University for college. Family members say he had just re-enrolled back into school after taking time off because he suffered from sickle cell anemia and was in and out of the hospital. Law enforcement officials are investigating whereabouts of 3,000 pounds of marijuana they recovered from St. Croix. Narcotics and Puerto Rico Coast Guard officers recovered 62 bales of marijuana that had been tossed overboard by a boat that had been stranded at sea. Drug enforcement officials said on April 3rd they got word of a boat bound for St. Croix that was carrying the contraband. That boat ran out of gas, and when associates of the drug-bound boat tried to rescue them, they also ran out of gas. Both had to be rescued, but no drugs were found on board. Several days later, a Coast Guard helicopter spotted the bales. Officials say the estimated value of the confiscated marijuana is between $2.6 and $5.2 million. The boat in question originated from Antigua and had a crew of both Antiguans and Jamaicans. Well, St. John is now number 2 in the world when it comes to top islands to visit. The popular travel website TripAdvisor recently announced the St. John ranking based on its Traveler's Choice Island survey. But that's not the only honor St. John has been given recently. The Department of Tourism said CNN's website listed St. John's Trunk Bay ahead of the pack on its roundup feature of 17 beaches we'd like to be lounging on. St. John's Canil Bay was also listed among the top 10 Caribbean resorts at www.gaia.com. St. Thomas and St. Croix are not to be left out. Recently, Travel Leisure Magazine's 2013 Best Beaches survey named St. Croix's Buck Island the best for seclusion. They named St. Thomas's Magens Bay as the best for families and St. John's Trunk Bay the best for wildlife viewing. Well, it's official. The territory is now a step closer towards becoming tsunami ready. On Tuesday, the Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Agency, or VITEMA, set up the area's first series of hazard zones and evacuation route signage on St. Thomas. They installed it in the areas of Brewers Beach, Niski, and Alamala Elementary School. The signage is now expected to alert residents and visitors in coastline areas away from any potential tsunami danger. The signage installation is expected to continue throughout St. Thomas, St. John, and make its way to St. Croix. Meanwhile, this month, VITEMA officials are marking National 911 Education Month with an outreach and education initiative developed to teach children when to use the Universal Emergency Number and about the role of first responders during emergencies. District managers and operators will visit elementary school-age children at Clodomaco, AZ Academy, Good Hope, Pearl B. Lawson, Eulalie Rivera on St. Croix, and Gladys Abraham and Alla Muller on St. Thomas. More than 200 students are participating in an interactive 45-minute session that teaches the basics of calling 911. In addition to National 911 Education Month, from April 14th to 20th, emergency operators will celebrate National Public Safety Telecommunications Week, which was created to honor the thousands of men and women who respond to emergency calls. Well, 6-year-old Brandon Holt was pronounced dead at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, about 24 hours after a shooting took place in the town of Toms River, New Jersey, shot in the head by a 4-year-old, his friend. On Monday evening, the young boys were playing. The 4-year-old went into the house, retrieved the rifle from within the house, a .22 caliber rifle. The incident was the second fatal shooting in the United States in recent days that involved children. On April 8th, a 4-year-old boy in the state of Tennessee shot and killed the wife of a sheriff's deputy using one of the loaded guns that he was showing off to a friend at his home. Meanwhile, the Senate is taking up new legislation on gun control. Some Republicans say it goes too far. Some Democrats complain it doesn't go far enough. Lawmakers are debating the measure as a vigil is held near the Capitol for victims of gun violence. Daniel Nottingham has the latest.
The Senate is debating new gun control legislation. Gun rights advocates tried to stop the debate before it began, but they lost the vote. Now lawmakers are considering a new bipartisan agreement. The compromise from Democrat Joe Manchin and Republican Pat Toomey would extend background checks to gun shows and online firearm sales.
A measure that helps to make it harder for violent criminals and the dangerously mentally ill to get guns. I think that's just common sense.
But some gun rights advocates say more background checks will not prevent another mass shooting.
This bill is a clear overreach that will predominantly punish and harass our neighbors, our friends, and our families.
The school shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary sparked the push for new gun control laws. Religious leaders are here on the National Mall remembering thousands who have died from gun violence since the Newtown tragedy and pressing Congress to act. Volunteers set up 3,300 wooden crosses, marking the number of Americans shot and killed in the past 4 months.
Each cross here represents a life that was lost.
On Capitol Hill, Sandy Hook families are meeting with lawmakers for a third day.
We're here to honor them and demand something be done, demand our voices be heard.
Some of the families sat down with Senator Manchin Wednesday. He had a top rating from the National Rifle Association, but now the organization says it will reevaluate lawmakers who do not oppose new gun legislation. Danielle Nottingham, CBS News, Washington.
And keeping our eye on the economy, the stock market is trying to keep its recent record rally alive. Both the Dow and S&P rose to 500, rose to new all-time highs Wednesday. More positive news on the job market could help extend the rally today. The government says the number of Americans applying for unemployment benefits fell sharply last week by 42,000 to 346,000. Analysts say the report suggests that weak hiring in March may have been temporary. This is the New York Stock Exchange with Scotiabank's Stock Market Watch. The Dow, Nasdaq, S&P all up. The Dow 62, Nasdaq 2, S&P 5. Coming up on News 2, the popular travel website TripAdvisor ranked St. John number 2, as we mentioned, on its list of top islands in the world in its Traveler's Choice Island survey. Plus, it's a tropical scene for Carnival 2013. Our Carnival Corner with the information you need to prepare for the celebrations and a taste of what to come. IRB officials are reminding you that the deadline for filing the 2012 individual income tax returns with the Bureau is Monday, April 15, 2013. Taxpayers are also reminded that they cannot file their returns using the e-filing option. The Bureau's offices on St. Thomas and St. Croix will have extended hours for the convenience of the taxpayers from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. St. John will observe regular work hours. Taxpayers who are unable to file their 2012 returns by the April 15th due date are reminded that they must properly estimate the tax due and a filed valid extension on Form 4868 no later than April 15th. The extension is only for filing the return. Taxpayers who owe must pay the tax due on April 15th to avoid the failure to pay penalty. St. Croix Montessori School will be hosting their 7th annual scholarship dinner on Saturday. The themed dinner, A Taste of India, will be held at the Palms at Pelicans Cove at 7 p.m. Organizers say most of the school's students receive some type of scholarship, so the proceeds help to determine the number of scholarships that will be available. Last year's event raised $15,000 for St. Croix Montessori Scholarship Fund. There will be authentic Indian cuisine, live music from the Ronnie Russell Quartet, a DJ, and genuine henna tattoo applications. Well, on Thursday on St. Croix, the second day of a workshop held at UVI's Extension Services for farmers. The two-day seminar was designed to teach potential and existing farmers post-harvest handling techniques. Wednesday's session dealt with blanching, freezing, bottling, and canning fruits and vegetables, while Thursday's was all about the meats and how to preserve them. The main presenter for the workshops was a chef from the University of Florida.
Post-harvest just simply means what are you going to do with the crop after it is harvested and you haven't sold it that particular day. If you can't cool it, then the next step is bottling, canning, and freezing. We also incorporated meat into this one because we are also working with livestock farmers. While we were here, we're also turning them into recipes. And our chef, Chef Burl from the University of Florida, has been assisting us in that entire process, and it's been a very, very successful time that we've had here.
My role here is to show them how to preserve foods, extend shelf life, and to make value-added products, such as things that they, after harvest, could add value, like jellies, jams, sausages, and things that they could make an additional income with.
Well, it's time for our Carnival Corner as things are shaping up nicely for the annual celebration. On Friday, April 12th, it's the revival of Brassorama, an opportunity for you to take a good listen to the brass sections of the band. On Saturday, it's the Calypso Review, some outstanding Calypsonians from home and abroad, hosted by Tommy Joseph, including Yankee Boy, Pink Panther, Brown Boy, David Rudder, and King Spade. It's a night of music, comedy, and camaraderie. On Sunday, it's all about the young ones with the Toddlers Derby at 5 p.m., then the Best Dressed as a Doll traditional games at 7 p.m. Some of the newcomers get a taste of old-time fun. Monday, it's carnival time at the Schneider Regional Medical Center, taking the festivities to those who can't make it out. Patients get a sneak peek of the parade. If traffic and parking seemed a little extra tight this morning, that's because the Fort Christian parking lot is now closed for the preparation of the opening of Carnival Village. Every year, Public Works shuts down the lot to make room for the Carnival Village, which includes a variety of vendor booths and popular children's rides. For those ready to plan ahead, the St. Thomas Carnival Village, honoring Sir Frederick Anthony Larson of Chico's Distributing, opens on April 19th at 6 p.m. Cars could be seen lined on the waterfront earlier today, downtown Charlotte Amalia. Again, police say in light of this, they will be lenient when it comes to parking in the downtown and surrounding areas. They will not, however, tolerate any violations of general parking restrictions. Those violations will be strictly enforced with a ticket in tow. Residents can go to www.vipd.gov.vi for a complete listing of the parking allowances and restrictions. This year's Atlantic hurricane season could see 18 named tropical storms, with 9 forming into hurricanes and 4 of those increasing into major hurricanes. That's according to a preseason forecast released Wednesday. With the June 1st official start of hurricane season about 8 weeks away, the Colorado State University forecasting team said they expect an above-average season. An average year, 10.1 named storms, 5.9 hurricanes, with 2.5 becoming major storms. They indicated a 61% chance of a landfall in the Caribbean. The forecast team cited an unusual warming of the tropical Atlantic and an anticipated lack of El Nino winds as the primary culprits. Speaking of which, stick around. Your News 2 AccuWeather forecast comes your way next.